I met Leslie when in 1971 when he came over to New York with Bram to promote his book, Voices in the Dark. I had just come back from touring with the Dance Theatre of Harlem, and I got a phone call from our mutual, Leslie and my mutual friend, which I never didn't know she used to talk about him, yeah. She said, Leslie's here, come on over, I want to introduce you. Well, I was knackered, and I didn't really want to go, but I did go. Well, I walked into the flat, and there was an archway around the hall, leading into the sitting room, and right opposite the archway was Leslie and Bram sitting there. And you know the feeling and the expression is, when you meet someone you know you've known in a past life. Did you know that feeling, instant recognition, and the emotions involved with it? Anyway, I went over and introduced myself, and nothing else was said. During the sitting, I think I got the first message, and no one there knew anything about my background, because the lady who was the hostess was a client of mine. And she, my grandmother came through, my maternal grandmother came through. It was her voice and her slight accent, and no one else would have known. And it also, I realize now she gave, it was in code because she was a very private person. She said, I want to talk to you about your mother, her daughter. And she said, you've got to forgive and forget, otherwise it'll destroy you. And I said, okay. And then she said, I love you very much, and give my love to your mum. And that was it. In all the years, then Leslie, after meeting, I invited him to the Dance Theatre, and I invited him to my flat for tea, and I showed them around New York. And then I was supposed to be on tour, go on tour with the Dance Theatre in '75, and I wasn't well. And I said to Leslie, I can't come over. So she said, you come over. Very demanding. And so he said, I'll pay your fare. I said, no, you won't. I'll borrow the money. Well, I did. And then the dance tour was over, and I went to see them at the what was it? I can't remember. It's a big dance. It's at Sadler Wells, I think it was. And then I invited them over. Leslie invited them over for a séance. Well, it was quite a séance, because he had other people there from all the papers and everything else. And the spirit people mostly ignored Leslie, unfortunately. He was furious. They went to the dancers, who were very psychic and very sensitive. Anyway, after that, they were left, and I stayed with Leslie every time I came back, until one day he blew up at me, very volatile. And I came here to the church. They put me up, and I've been here since. And Mickey had said it was all arranged, that I had to be at the church because one day I would hold a high office here. And Roz, the secretary at that time, says, not if I have anything to do with it. And she did. Anyway, Leslie and we had, and Bram, it was there socially, and they gave love parties, and they had people over, and Roz and her husband would come over, and they had New Year's Eve parties, special with a piper in and so on. And they loved fancy dress parties. I never went to one, but they did. Prior to my coming back, I should say, Leslie always had theatre people there. He loved theatre people and film people. He was quite a unique character. He was one of the very most big-hearted people I've ever met. I know that he used to see people that were dead, and he'd tell his granny, and she'd give him a bash around the ear because she said it couldn't be. And she got a letter some aunt came and brought a picture, and Leslie looked at the picture, and I think he was about 8 or 9, something like that. And she said, he said, that's the man I saw the other day. It was an uncle of his, and again he got a bashing on the head. Anyway, she used to go to the cinema with him, and he loved the cinema. And he'd sit there, and people would moan because there was whispers all the way around him. And he was disturbing people. He couldn't help it. He didn't know what was happening. In school, he loved art. And he had a very warm feeling for an art teacher who befriended him. And after he left school, he had to earn money. After he left school, I think he left at 16 or something like that. And he got a job as a grave digger. And one day he came across a headstone, and it was his teacher's grave. Well, he went to the rubbish bin and he found some fresh flowers, and then he put it in front of his grave. That's the kind of man he was. He is. I'm sorry, Leslie. Then he used to go to meetings only because he was hungry, and they served tea and biscuits at meetings. So somebody in the church, and then prior to that, and I think he was quite young, about 8 years old, he got a letter. Grandmother gave him a letter from Germany, from a medium there, who said he's got to carry on with his development. And a man in an Arab outfit told her to tell him, because that was Valentino. Anyway, so it must have been sometime in the 30s, because Valentino passed, and of course Valentino knew all about the subject. He went on to join a dance class because he loved dancing, and he developed so well that he was teaching dancing, and he was teaching with a lady called, oh God, give me a name, who later became his wife. I wish I could remember his name, but it's age, I guess. It might come to me. And they used to go to meetings. And of course he was in the development circle for 7 years. It was a group of people, and it was a group of Jewish people. He always emphasized that because they gave so much to him of their time and energy without even wanting anything in return. And he said, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have developed. And sometimes he used to drift off, and he didn't know what was happening, come back. And they used to talk about certain phenomena that happened. It was more or less a trance, though he wasn't used as a trance medium, except I'll tell you something later. Then the voices started coming in the circle, and word got around from the societies, and he did very little work. Then his wife, oh God, it begins with an M. God, give me the name, will you please? Muriel. No, it wasn't Muriel, was it? It was Muriel. No, I think so. Something sounding like that. Anyway, they developed a dance class, and they would have they would have groups of circles at their home, and she would see to everything. And he traveled all over England and treated like royalty in many respects. So he became a little spoiled that way, rightfully so, because she shouldn't have had to worry about any of those mechanics and so on. Then one of his biggest blows was when his stepson was killed was killed after the war. He absolutely adored him. Okay, it begins with a G and I can't think of it. Anyway, the son had moved to California and married and had 2 daughters, I think. And then he found out, and so he went on and on doing the work. And then his wife became ill. She had a stroke. And he couldn't do it on his own, so a young man who knew him from one of the churches moved in, and he looked after him. I think he was a carer or a nurse or something like that. And then he passed away. And then he met Rosie Creed, who was one of his sitters, and she had this big Brunel house in Westbourne Terrace, 140. And one of the flats became about, and she offered him the flat, and they said, fine. Then he did meet Bram at the theatre, and they became friends, and then became partners, and they were very devoted to each other for almost 30 years, I think. And then when Rosie passed away, the year after I met him, I think it was 72, 73, she left him the house. And had 2 floors of flats above, or 3 floors of flats. So he had an income from that. But all the time he loved coming to the States, he loved going to California. Of course, Mae West was one of his biggest clients, and he met her here at the Dorchester, or was it the Royal? Savoy. And then when he used to go to California, he used to go out and see her and many other people. He knew Valentino's family as well. He lived a very quiet life, really, towards the end. Well, how I became involved in spiritualism. I had a gift all my life. As a youngster, I used to see things, hear things. I knew people, I saw manifestations of people I knew who were dead from the family. Didn't know what to do about it. Told my mother, she didn't understand. Of course, I had an uncle who was schizophrenic. She thought I was schizophrenic, took me to a doctor. And they said, you're schizophrenic. And they institutionalized me. Anyway, it was a good experience. I got through that, came out. And then my business partner was involved in psychics and readers and so on. And he took me to see this medium, very well-known medium, Caroline Chapman, who lived in my area. And she changed my life completely. She told me all that had transpired in my life. She told me that one day I'd come back to England and I would develop here, really develop here. Because prior to that, I was doing my meditation every day after my training here with Ivy Northage, and I had to go back to the States. Then she more or less described Leslie, and I didn't know who he was. But later on, coming back from Europe in 65, I think it was, I used to read the cards and not knowing what I was doing. And have these things blurted out with socially with people. Scared the hell out of them. But I just did it naturally. I thought it was natural. Anyhow, another primary element in my experiences were I seemed to know things. I seemed to create in my sleep state, and I never slept anyway, but I did a lot of astral traveling, which I know now. People used to ring and say, what the hell were you doing in my room last night? And sorry about the clock. Anyway, that all developed that way, perfectly natural. I was told by Ivy to do my meditation when I went back to the States, and every day my people started developing me, and then I had started Oh, came back, and I wasn't able to work because I was coming back to England at that time. And my friend at the Gypsy Tea Kettle, who was a reader, a card reader, said, "Why don't you work here? You do the job very well." So I did. Earned some pennies. And I built a clientele that way, and then stopped that and started working from home. And my people told me to stop using the cards. They weren't necessary. And that's how I started using the mediumship stuff. It came through in the cards, but it came through without the cards now. And I never looked back from there. Yes, well, there are many levels one could work with spirit. If you work with it on a physical or psychic level, you're working with etheric bodies. If you're working as a medium, and I learned this many years ago when I was developing from Ivy Northage, that in order for a medium to be used by an entity from the other side, the medium must raise their vibrations, and the entity has to be able to lower their vibration. Now, this is a learned process on both sides of the veil. My voice is changing. Well, got the German people coming through, do we? Anyhow, out of Delhi, I'm aware of the energies around me. When I'm not working as an instrument, or doing a sitting, or taking a service, I tend to try to be closed down. Unless the people on the other side want to use me urgently, and there's an urgent need, then I'll start blurting things out to someone. Not that I remember. I never remember what comes through me. Because when I was a youngster, I had a photographic memory. That's because I was dyslexic and had to remember properly. When I started doing this work, I started remembering these things, and I said, "Look, I don't want to know any of this stuff. Please stop it." And they did. Now, it's the old adage, if you don't ask, you don't get. Now, working with spirit, or working in hunches, I get hunches about things, and sometimes I don't mind to it. Then something happens suddenly, and I say, that's what that means. Okay, and I do advise anyone who has a mediumistic ability, don't be frightened of it. If you have people visiting you and you don't want them there, tell them to please leave and go to the light. If you have it continuously and you can't control it, my suggestion is go to a spiritualist organization. There are many of them around. Not a fortune teller or a psychic college, but a true spiritualist organization. Somebody will be there, and ask those who come close to you, your loved ones who passed over, ask them for help. If you don't ask, you won't get. You have to ask for help, because those on the other side of life are not allowed to interfere with your free will unless you just turn it over to them. And that's what happens with many people who don't want to take responsibility for their lives. So they say, "Spirit made me do it," or this person made me do it. And no one makes you do anything you don't want to do. You allow it to happen. And this is why I say, if you develop properly, you have to be in control of your gift. Otherwise, it'll go haywire. And then you really go around the bend. And I wish you well. Well, I'm not very pleased with it personally, and it's not the way it used to be. It's not the dedication and the commitment that people who are developing have to give. There's some classes that open schools, and I'm not mentioning any names. They know who they are. That's one of Leslie's statements. They give these courses at tremendous amounts of money, and you take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and it's done more on a psychic level or an auric level than it does on a mediumistic level. Now, you can be psychic without being a medium, but you can't be a medium without being a psychic. And one is developed from the other. And the best development of mediumship is done in one's home circle or on your own in your meditation. Because if you establish a link with your helpers and teachers, it's a marriage. You establish a relationship and you committed yourself to it. Now try to do your meditation at least 10 minutes a day. Because I always say that, people say, oh, you don't do that. Well, I say that's the way you establish your connection with them. And they have to learn how to adjust their energies to yours, and the sitter or the developing medium has to learn to adjust their energies. And it's a mutual action. And that's why it's so important to sit every day, even if it's just 5 minutes or 10 minutes to establish that link. And they will know you better than yourself. They will develop you how they want you to use you. There's no good going to taking a course and say, oh, I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be a psychic artist, I'm going to do a psychic meditation, so on, all that stuff. Don't tell Spirit what they're going to do. They will tell you what they want you to do and how they were going to use, because your commitment is them. They know your energies better. And there's no sense in limiting yourself to one particular aspect of spiritualism. If you're an instrument and you've developed yourself as an instrument, you can be used in many different ways, because there are many forms of mediumship. And here ended the lesson. Right. Well, when Leslie passed away, I'd seen him a week before, and we said our goodbyes because we both knew he was going. And then after the funeral, Gwen Vaughan and I went down to look after the things at the house, and we talked about Leslie's work, and we said, how can we not preserve this work? It's so important for so many people. And so we went through all the archives, and Gwen herself was an archivist, and she had copies of all the tapes and material and all the Valentino stuff, and she did the foundation and all the records and all the material. She held on to all that. And then we got together, and we got a solicitor developed. We wanted to do a trust. Yes, in many different ways. I mean, the last time I had physical contact with him through another medium, very well-known independent direct voice medium, several years ago. But he talked about the trust, and he encouraged us, and he told us what he would like to happen to the trust, and we tried to follow those directions. On a personal level, every once in a while I'll pop in to my Thursday evening circle, and Corin will give 1 or 2 little tidbits that he uses. And I will say, as I end this interview, and I think that we are coming to the end, aren't we? Mm-hmm. That the primary ingredient for developing one's spirituality is to know thyself and love thyself, not in a physical sense. As Mickey always said, if you want to find self, lose self. And that's my reaction in my work. I'm out of it. If they want to use me, fine. That's fine. I'm available. But you have to love yourself, not the physical aspect of you, but the godlike essence that we all created in the image of. And therefore, allowing that to develop, that will reflect from you to all people around you. And there are no mistakes, and there are no errors, there are only experiences. Wish you all well. Many blessings.